Welcome back for another book talk video. For Monday, I talk about fantasy. It's Magical Monday. Today I'm talking about The Gunslinger by Stephen King. And you might be thinking, whoa, Jeremy Fee, isn't that horror? Isn't that kind of maybe weird horror, sci-fi stuff? And the answer is maybe, but it's really fantasy. Stephen King swears that he wrote this book because he grew up reading Tolkien's books, The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and he loved fantasy, and he wanted to write fantasy, though this is very different. This is not elves and dwarves battling along with hobbits. So Stephen King, of course, in trying to write fantasy, still writes a book that feels like a horror novel with some kind of interdimensional sci-fi feeling stuff going on with it. But I'm going to go ahead and leave it here in the fantasy category because I think that's the best one for it. But feel free to call it a multi-genre, mixed genre sort of experience. In my actual bookshelves, I keep it in my horror suspense area because it's Stephen King, even though it's really fantasy and it should probably be on a different bookshelf. But my goodness, my fantasy bookshelves are already full, packed full of other books. I read this book as part of a group read-along or readathon put on by Steve over at Steve's. Steve talks about books and stuff. He's got a great YouTube channel. I highly recommend it. And he's also got a website that's got forums in it. You can easily sign up for his website, join the forums. I believe the plan is we are reading one book a month from the Dark Tower series. This is book 1 in the series. So over the next, 6 more months, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books in the series. So I guess over 8 months, we're reading all the books in the series. The only thing is, during the discussion for this book, a decision was made to take one of the books out of order and put it at the end of the series. Apparently that's the publication order. So we're really reading them in publication order, not necessarily the order that they're numbered for the series. And I think that's cool too. I enjoyed participating in the discussion. When Steve hosted a live discussion for the book, I was not one of the people who joined in on camera. I mean, why would I do that? You don't need to see my face on camera. But I showed up and participated via text in the discussion comments. But it was a wonderful discussion. I enjoyed listening to everyone who was there, and they did react to those of us who were typing things out and leaving comments. Ultimately, they got to our comments and questions. In the discussion, I mentioned that this book reminded me of some other story experiences. It reminded me in some ways of Westworld. It reminded me in some ways of The Matrix. And I believe there was a third something that I mentioned that it reminded me of. Off the top of my head, I don't remember just at this moment. Why did it remind me of The Matrix? Well, because in the Matrix series, there's this idea that you could go to this station as a place that's kind of an in-between place as you travel from one reality to another. And there was kind of a sense of that going on somewhat in The Gunslinger. Why did it remind me of Westworld? Well, because Westworld has a lot of violence in what seems to be a cowboy-type setting. And in this story, there's a lot of violence. The main character, the Gunslinger, seems to be a cowboy-like character. Oh, the other series that I mentioned was The Mandalorian, because The Mandalorian has a cowboy-like figure who ends up trying to help rescue a child. There is a young man who is in this story, and the Gunslinger does get to interact with him and try to help him. But the main concept of the book that you get from the very beginning, first sentence, first paragraph, is that the Gunslinger is tracking down and trying to find/catch a man called the Man in Black. And if you've read more of Stephen King's literature, there's a chance that you've encountered this Man in Black in some of his other works. I've not read all of his books, but in my mind, I was picturing Johnny Cash, because, sometimes Johnny Cash is called the Man in Black, wearing all black, performing his music. It was not Johnny Cash. It's more of a feeling of a character who could be something like Death or a serial killer, a deadly, challenging opponent. But from the beginning, the Gunslinger is wondering what in the world's going on with this character, because the Man in Black doesn't leave food stuff behind. He doesn't even leave, the remains of his waste behind. The Gunslinger develops a theory that the Man in Black is burying his waste and that sort of thing. So the book does get into those kind of gross details. The book does have a lot of violence as the Gunslinger is killing people along the way. And as per the discussion, I don't want to give you spoilers, but there were a lot of people who've read this book who felt like the ending did not provide the huge, climactic, fun ending that they were expecting. A lot of people criticized the book as the ending is much more of a toned down experience. Because, you know, from the premise, you expect that the gunslinger and the man in black are going to have some sort of duel. They're going to be gunfighting, shooting back and forth, that sort of thing. And I just need to warn you, if that's your expectation, you may need to temper your expectations, lower them for the ending. This is just book one in a series. So it's more like this book is setting up the rest of what is sure to come. I've not read the rest of the series yet, but it was really fun to be a part of the discussion where half the people have read the rest of the series or more of the series, and they're really rereading it, and they say you get a lot more out of it when you read the book a second time. Or you've already read the rest of the series and you come back and you reread the first book. Apparently there are a lot of references, there's a lot of foreshadowing of things to come, and you just don't know what those clues are and what that it's foreshadowing just yet in this book. And I'm fine with that. It's book one of the series, part of a larger whole. So if you like fantasy that is kind of Westworld, cowboy, out there fantasy, not elves and dwarves fighting battles, or little hobbits stealing things and having funny moments, different kind of fantasy, more of a horror fantasy, then I think that you would enjoy this book. If you're a huge fan of Stephen King and you like the idea that he's going to be taking different elements from the different books he's written and potentially mixing in clues and references and elements of different books, then you should definitely read the series. It's The Dark Tower, Book 1, The Gunslinger. My last comment before I go is don't expect this man to throw his guns at people. The Gunslinger is a bit of a misnomer. He has bullets and he shoots people. He does not throw his guns. Though, he can use the guns to hit people over the head and that sort of thing. Every day is a good day for a book talk. Peace.